Yeah, now that idea began in earnest with Newton. That's the Newtonian worldview. Newton said, look, we can break all this down to mass and force, momenta, acceleration, all the basic things, time, and after that we can just calculate how the world would be. And in Newton's time, well, it was really after Newton. This is kind of mostly the scientists came after Newton. We shouldn't really blame this on Newton. He was just the guy who started it off with some very ingenious work, pulling a lot of things together, But those that came after him saw the world as a big clock. That's what he means, mechanical, like a big clockwork. And the idea was that if you knew the state, and we should say state vector, well, what that means is, mass, position, velocity, time of every particle in the universe, then you knew everything. After that, you could compute everything that would happen from that time forward if you had all this basic information in science. It was just a big clockwork. If you know how the inside of your clock works, you can tell where it's been and where it's going because it's just a big machine. And that was the Newtonian idea. Well, the Newtonian idea held for a long time. It held for a long enough time that scientists, on all kinds of scientists, but I'll blame it on physicists most because that's kind of the basic, most fundamental science. Physicists got the idea that this is a big machine, and that everything is a big machine. Bodies, biology, it's just a big machine. If you know how things work, then you can predict what's going to happen next. The only reason we can't predict everything is we don't have all the initial conditions, and we don't necessarily have all the facts as far as how things interact. Well, when relativity came along, that just kind of blew this big mechanical view of reality away, because relativity said, no, it's not necessarily, a great big machine. There's things that, a lot of it is relative to the observer's viewpoint. And he started talking about have different observers in inertial frames traveling at velocities relative to each other, and suddenly the world looks different. We have time dilation and length contraction, and mass grows with velocity and so on. And these things are not at all part of this big mechanical world. And then it got worse when quantum mechanics came along. Okay, so relativity made this big mechanical reality a very strange and weird mechanical reality that kind of depended on the observer's viewpoint. And then quantum mechanics came along and said, well, this machine is not even a physical, not even a real solid massy machine. Particles are probability distributions. If we think of particles as a probability distribution, then we can compute what happens next. But otherwise we can't. So suddenly this fundamental idea that at the particle level, it's just probability. It's not really little massy particles. And these days, physicists say things like this: an electron is a point that has the properties of charge and the properties of mass. They don't say an electron is a little chunk of mass with charge. That's what they used to say. But now it's a point, and it has the properties of mass and the properties of charge. Well, how would you simulate an electron in a computer? How would you simulate it? It would be a point with the properties of charge and the properties of mass. Well, that tells you, that points to the fact that reality is virtual. It's information. A simulated reality is a reality created out of information. And that seems to be what we've got. That's where science is taking us. So this idea that nature is a big machine is a Newtonian concept that we just haven't been able to shake. scientists and science got so convinced of that, they bought into so completely the idea of reality as a big machine, that even though we're almost 100 years past relativity and quantum mechanics, not quite, it's like 87 or 88, we're in around 90 years past those major sciences that showed that it isn't a big machine, most all scientists, including physicists, still down at their gut level, in their hearts, they still see it as a big machine. And it's all physical, even though physical particles aren't really physical anymore. They're probability distributions. So that idea is still there. Our mindset today is reality is a big machine. Everything's based on material, you see, and that's just a holdover from Newtonian physics. We've never really accepted quantum mechanics for what it is. What have we done? Well, here's quantum mechanics, and it kind of denies that reality is a big machine. So what have we done? We say, well, you know, reality really is still a big machine. We just don't understand this quantum mechanics. This quantum mechanics is just weird. And you can't really, say the quantum mechanics, means anything. We just don't know what it means. So what they've done is they've taken the science that contradicts their belief, and instead of changing their belief, they just call that science weird science that nobody will ever understand. You see, there's a problem there. So they cling to the Newtonian viewpoint, and their science that conflicts with that viewpoint, they write off as, well, we just don't understand it. Well, we don't understand it in any kind of normal way, and normal means materialistic way. You see, so we can't understand. And that's a quote, right out of Feynman. Feynman, one of the best quantum mechanics theorists ever, a brilliant guy, and he says, we probably will never understand quantum mechanics, in the normal sense of understand. Well, that means in a materialistic way. Well, of course you won't. Quantum mechanics says reality isn't material, so you'll never understand it, in a material way. Well, guys, face the facts. Reality is not material. And then let's go on and grow from that. And it's like, oh, no. Reality is all material. We just don't understand this quantum mechanics. You see, it's just weird and we don't understand it. Well, that's where we've gotten. That's why it's almost, a century past, quantum mechanics inception and relativity's inception. We're getting close to a century beyond that, and we're still stuck in a Newtonian viewpoint because we refuse to accept what we don't want to hear. That's what happens when you're trapped in a belief. Not only does it make you want to censor the heretics, it makes you refuse to see, what you don't want to see. So quantum mechanics is just this mysterious, crazy science that we'll never understand. And our reality is just all material and, just like we always, thought it was from Newton on. So it's that kind of thing. So you say, well, how can science, quantum mechanics isn't a new science, how can they go on with this idea that non-local phenomena don't exist when they do? Well, they just say, well, yeah, it does, sort of, but that's just craziness, and it's really material. We just don't understand it, and they go on. Obviously, you can see what's going on here, right? This is somebody who has a belief. Their science tells them it's not right, and they just deny it and call the science not understandable in any normal sense. Shut up and calculate, right? That's the deal. So yes, we believe that nature is mechanical, even though we have tons of proof that says it is not. We refuse to accept that, and we just continue on with this idea that nature is mechanical, because that makes us feel like we're in charge. That makes us feel like this crazy stuff frightens us, because it's not physical. And the physical stuff is what delivered us out of the 15th century, belief-based mania that ruled the world for so long. So that's why, yes, that is a big one. That's probably the most underlying, the most fundamental of these dogmas. That's the one that all the rest of them kind of hang on, a refusal to not be a materialist. They don't want to leave that. There's security in materialism. There's terrifying uncertainty in something that goes beyond materialism.
Well, thank you, Tom. The second one is matter is unconscious. There is no subjectivity.
Yeah, well, when he said that, and just as that statement is made, matter is unconscious, I would agree with that. I'd say, matter is unconscious, but that's not just what he means. I watched the video just a little bit before, so I kind of got an idea of what really he was talking about. Sure. And he talked about the science believes that nothing is conscious. That's really what he means by that matter is unconscious. He doesn't mean that rocks have big thoughts, and that, fence posts are watching you as you walk, down the road and then discussing you after you walk by. That's not really what he's talking about when he says, right. Matter is that, this big belief that matter is unconsciousness is unconscious is a dogma. What he means is that science believes that nothing is conscious. And as he says in his talk, they don't even believe that we are conscious. Right. Because there's this hard problem that says consciousness, there's no real material way for that to exist. Matter doesn't create thought. How does matter create thought? You see, that's the hard problem, and because they're stuck with that hard problem, then they say, well, then if matter doesn't create it, it doesn't exist. So nothing's really conscious. We're just interacting, you see. Now this gets them to their deterministic idea. There is no consciousness. There is no free will. We just are in this deterministic, right? That goes back to nature is mechanical. Reality is just the big machine. Okay, that's all deterministic. And the same determinism that nature is mechanical says that, we're just going through the motions. We have no free will. We make no choices. It just seems like we do. It's a hallucination. We kind of believe we do. We look at it and we have that illusion of choice and mind and thinking, but really, that's not happening. There is no such thing as consciousness. It's all a big machine, and it's all deterministic, and it just cranks on, and we just have this hallucination. Well, that's nonsense. It's nonsense that's been created to maintain a belief. When you have a belief and things, your belief starts to fall apart, what you do is you make things up to support your belief. And if it's nonsense, well, then you come up with nonsense. I mean, we see that all over. Find somebody that has a very fundamental belief about something, and you'll see that if you corner them with an inconsistency in that belief, they'll just make something up. So in order to help them maintain the belief, you say, well, where, these dinosaur bones that are, so many million years old. Oh, well, let's see. They were planted there. People put those there trying to, rebut the truth, So they make stuff up. That's the way it is with belief. If you've got a strong belief, you make up nonsense. Well, this idea that, that nothing's conscious, we're in this deterministic world, there is no free will, there is no consciousness, everything just happens because it's meant to happen, because it's a big machine, the big clockwork, nature's mechanical. That's really, really silly, That's a really bizarre and a dumb idea. But if you're desperate and you have a belief, then you make stuff up like that, and you say it like you believe it, and you beat anybody with a stick who disagrees with you. Or actually, you just pull them off of TED Talks, and make them go sit in a corner.